Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item is 2.03, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0-0. The next item is to establish the agenda order, and the agenda stands as published. Item 2.05 is recognitions, and today we would like to recognize the United Way of Central Maryland and the Arundel County Partnership for Children. We have Gail Cicero coming to do the presentation.
Good morning. I'm Gail Cicero, Director of Student Services, and I have the pleasure of introducing this morning's board recognition. Before I begin, I would like to ask the members of the board and Dr. Arlato to come forward. Members of the board and Dr. Arlato, we are thrilled to be here this morning to recognize two agencies that have gone the extra mile to help families outside the classroom so that children can be in a better position to excel inside of it. The United Way of Central Maryland and the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families entered into an agreement with our school system earlier this year that will provide critical resources for families experiencing homelessness and help manage cases where families are on the verge of homelessness. A $182,000 grant from the United Way of Central Maryland will fund the program, which will be overseen by the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. A caseworker is stationed at MacArthur Middle School and will work with families in that area referred by our school system. This initiative has two parts: shelter diversion, which helps families experiencing homelessness secure permanent housing, and family stability, which offers case management, counseling, and in some cases, financial assistance to families in order to prevent homelessness. What it provides more than anything else for our children is stability. Students who do not have to worry whether the house or apartment they left this morning will be the one for which they return to today after school. For our children, this initiative is about removing distractions to learning and broadening the avenues to achievement that are available to them. There is a track record of success here as well. The United Way also has programs in Baltimore City and Baltimore County and has served over 100 families. The most positive impact in terms of education for children is that students remain in their home school with friends, teachers, counselors, and administrators who know them best. I've mentioned the word stability several times, but I'd like to leave you with a different word: potential. Think for a minute about the potential of children and families who are experiencing or on the verge, through no fault of their own, about potential. Now think of the unlimited potential that can be restored to children through programs like this. It speaks to the very core of what we do, and that's why we are so fortunate to have the collaboration of these two great agencies. I could give you many other statistics, but none would be as impactful as the words of a young mother in our county with 7 children who has spent the last 2 years at a hotel before encountering the program this fall. Working with the United Way has improved my family's life so much in so little time, she said. She has been able to work a miracle, the caseworker that is, at MacArthur, that I could never imagine. I truly hope this program can continue for a long time and help other families like ours. Sandy Monk, Chief Impact Officer of the United Way, and Brad Dunnell, the Assistant Director of the United Way of Central Maryland, and Pam Brown, Executive Director for the Partnership for Youth and Families and Children, are here with us this morning. As they come forward, please join me in thanking them and their agencies for helping us to help our children realize their full potential.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for helping. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for Thank you very much. Absolutely. Can you come back and let's get a picture? We're gonna get pictures now. This side.
And you can kind of display your certificate for the photo. Yeah. Three photos, everybody. Look at the slate.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
The next item on our agenda is item 2.06, Educator of the Month, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Ms. Korpelak. Today, the Board of Education recognizes an educator in our school system whose main goal is encouraging student success. But like most educators who perform their duties in the classroom, our Educator of the Month works tirelessly behind the scenes. The Pupil Personnel Worker, otherwise known as the PPW, collaborates with students, parents, and other agencies to address student success and academic achievement. Melinda Spence, PPW for 5 Annapolis elementary schools, is an incredibly positive force in building relationships between parents and each of her schools. Since her assignment with the Annapolis area schools, Mrs. Spence has worked closely with attendance committees and school principals to promote county guidelines and provide assistance with developing strategies to improve student attendance. She is a wonderful asset to the building, principals, attendance committees, and teachers. Mrs. Spence is an outstanding employee for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. She is truly dedicated to educating parents and students about the importance of school attendance. She goes above and beyond in the building and in building the positive relationships between the schools and the parent community. Working in support of student attendance is just one responsibility of the pupil personnel worker. Melinda also contacts community agencies, consults with school personnel, and makes home visits. In addition, she assists schools to investigate residency issues, answers questions related to custody, and assists with enrollment of kinship, hardship, and homeless students. Mrs. Spence consistently maintains a professional attitude and has a tremendous aptitude for completing her responsibilities, often going above and beyond the expectations of her job requirements. Melinda is dedicated to her students. She gets to know them personally and develops very positive, long-lasting relationships. She is a role model and a mentor. Melinda is dedicated to her parents. When working with them, she is very forthcoming and proactive in providing them with strategies for positive parenting, all in support of student success. Melinda Spence, the Board of Education is honored to recognize you, Educator of the Month for November. In the words of your principals, you are truly a treasure and an excellent educator making a positive impact on the school system. It is because of your excellence that the Annapolis principals as a group want to recognize you for a job well done. Congratulations, and please join me up front. today?
Well, I was supposed to have an evaluation conference and I was late, and then they told me I had to come down here to I can't remember. I really am kind of.
So who's here with you today?
My husband John is here, and all the principals from the schools where I
The
work.
usual suspects, I see.
Yeah, secretary from the school where I work, and counselors from schools where I work, and one counselor who used to be at the school where I work, but now she's in middle school. So you guys, you totally got me. I'm like, I don't know what to say. First time ever in my life.
Well, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very impressive speech they wrote.
Yeah, thank you.
And this is a bell.
Okay.
I don't know what you want to do with the bell.
Okay. Actually, on some home visits early in the morning, I could stand there and ring it out. Oh, that might help. That might help. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I just want to remind our awardees to just hang around for a little bit until after item 2.11, and we'll take some pictures out in the hall. The next item is 2.07, Employee of the Month. Aisha.
Today we celebrate an employee in our school system whose principal refers to her as his right-hand woman because she is a constant resource, often offering sound advice. Her performance is consistently outstanding in every aspect of her position. Kathy Pulse, Principal Secretary at Oakwood Elementary School, has done an amazing job for the past 14 years, as has become an expert in all areas of her position and beyond. In the past 3 years, she has received a perfect score on 2 of the yearly audits. Kathy's communication skills are superior. She is an excellent writer and proofreads and edits many documents that go home to families. She composes thank you letters and articles for the monthly newsletter. She stays updated on all of the happenings at the school and is able to clearly communicate with parents in answering their many questions. Kathy demonstrates a high degree of willingness to assist other staff members and students. Whether it is fixing the copier, calling parents, assisting with a field trip, or getting supplies, she does so cheerfully and with a positive attitude. Students and staff find her compassionate and willing to travel the extra mile to assist them. Her voice on the telephone is warm and helpful, and her presence in the office is always welcoming to all those who enter. Kathy helps create a homey atmosphere at Oakwood. She recently purchased a Keurig coffee and tea maker for the faculty. Her baked goods and candies are always a warm welcome on any given day. Her personal sentiments to colleagues who may need sympathy or who may be celebrating a special event has earned her the title of Staff Mom. Kathy Pulse, you are the ultimate professional. Many visitors from other schools or the Board of Education comment on your efficiency and professionalism and are equally impressed with your knowledge of the school and your willingness to help. You take your job very seriously. You are an amazing resource and a friend to all. So to the right-hand woman and to the staff mom at Oakwood Elementary School, the Board of Education is honored to recognize you as Employee of the Month for November 2014. Congratulations, and please join me up front.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I have a bell and a certificate here from the Board of Ed, and I would just like to ask you, as many of the people who come here, they're tricked into coming here with some kind of excuse. How did they get you to come here today?
Well, I'm still looking for Bob Yatzik. He was supposed to recognize us for our security in our building. I don't see him here. So that was it.
finally, some other staff members that I just saw walk in, the counselor, Carolyn Hall, Mrs. Pickard, our former PTA president, my partner, Waynisha, and my husband actually is here. So, yeah, thank you all very much. Thank you.
Next, we have item 2.08, Volunteer of the Month, Mrs. Ritchie.
Thank you. Many of us who serve on the Board of Education are parents and or educators, and we know firsthand what years of research consistently conclude about parent involvement in their children's schools. Engaged parents are more supportive of the school goals, their children achieve more academic success, and teachers benefit with more time for individual students and lesson planning. Parent volunteers have a real and lasting impact on the entire school community. One such volunteer contributes her time and talent for the students and faculty at the Bates Middle School. Today, the Board of Education is pleased to honor Ms. Kim Allison. Mrs. Allison is known as an outstanding, dependable volunteer at Bates who works in several capacities to benefit the school. Math Department Chair Jessica Mullins reports that Mrs. Allison's volunteers for the entire department every week. Our teachers have more time for collaborative planning because she efficiently completes many of our clerical tasks and is always with enthusiasm. We really rely on her. In addition, Mrs. Allison is a dedicated weekly volunteer for the AVID program. She assists with class instructions, works with small groups, and tutors individuals toward mastery in instructional goals. When school-wide events occur, such as the Family 5K Run, the Robotics Club competitions, and the Multicultural Fair, Mrs. Allison is there, cheering on her own children and helping in any way she can. Mrs. Allison showed from the start that she is wonderful with the students. So when asked to serve as a substitute teacher, she jumped right in and became a favorite of both the students and the teachers. Principal DeRue agrees that Bates Middle School community is grateful to have such an involved parent as Mrs. Allison. Ms. Allison, would you please come forward, as with great appreciation, we'd like to present this Volunteer of the Month certificate and bell to you. Come on camera now. I'd ask you how you're feeling, but I've got a feeling you're a little overwhelmed, huh? Yeah, very good. We have this wonderful certificate for you, and more importantly, this bell, so you can get everybody's attention. Yeah, that was very helpful. And how'd they get you here today?
She said they needed a volunteer rep, so.
There you go. We understand about that volunteering, and it's especially, you know, in middle school, to go in there is really terrific, and we really do appreciate all that you help that you do, because it helps not only your children, but it also helps all the children that are in the school. So we're very appreciative. I see you brought a whole bunch of people here this morning.
My whole family.
Your whole family's here this morning?
Yeah.
And then anybody else with you?
Miss Bonas, Mr. Drew, and yeah, teachers, and yeah.
Great, wonderful. Well then go in front of the eyes so we can get some good pictures.
Next, we have school and community highlights. Mrs. Ritchie.
Actually, I want to tell you about an upcoming event because it will have occurred before our next board meeting, and it's our wonderful, it's an annual, but it's more than just annual. There's two of them, actually, Parent Involvement Conference that'll be coming up on November the 15th. And this one is at the Anne Arundel Community College. We, for over 10 years, have been doing these parent involvement workshops, and they've grown exponentially. I mean, from the first years when you just had a few parents who shown up to now we pack the community college, and it's absolutely wonderful. And when they first started, it mostly was elementary parents who were showing up to these things because, you know, they're enthusiastic. By the time we get to high school, we're a little tired. But now they have workshops for all age levels, and it's always amazing because I've had the opportunity to go for a couple years, and I talk to parents, and I've been able to talk to parents from elementary, middle, and high school, and they absolutely find these to be extremely beneficial. I just ran through the program a little bit, and they have things like getting anchored with literacy for the elementary one, and then they also have some math ones, and they have some high school ones, Math Brain, secondary math, what parents need to know. I'm not sure they could teach me everything I need to know for that one, but they have tons of them, and it's a great way for parents also to connect with other parents outside of their schools. I think sometimes we get locked in our schools and we don't realize that the same things are happening in other schools, and so parents have the opportunity to talk to other parents and to really connect and feel that they are really truly valued and a partner in our school system. So if you have not registered for the event, it is a free event. You will have a continental breakfast. Is there lunch? There is lunch. I wanted to confirm that real quick. And so it's a really great opportunity, and it's a very, I don't think you will feel like you have wasted your time on a Saturday morning by coming there. It's absolutely terrific, and it's out of our School and Family Partnership office, and this one is under Ann's leadership, and they do a fabulous, fabulous job. So make sure you attend.
Mrs. Burge.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to sit in on the CAC meeting the other night, and Ms. O'Neill, I'm not going to steal your thunder about what happened at your meeting, but I do want to say that I was really pleased with the progress that the various committees are making on the issues that they are studying. And I also, and this might be stealing a little bit of your thunder, wanted to thank Laura Gardner from our staff. She's our ELL Family and Community Outreach Manager. I hope I got the title correct. She did a fabulous job with a presentation for the group. I actually got a better understanding of what her job is, and she did a wonderful job with a presentation to the entire CAC of some of the challenges and issues that our international community face, and I want to thank her for her presentation the other evening because it was quite outstanding. So thank you.
Mrs. Nally.
Well, I'm very excited to see the Annapolis principals here. They're never all here together because they're working. But first, I want to thank all of you because I just think our Annapolis elementary schools are great, and it's due to your leadership. I was really excited to see Mrs. Walsh marching up Main Street. The Halloween parade was, again, after a 2-year hiatus, was the merchants, everybody. It was really a wonderful celebration in Annapolis to see the kids walking up Main Street, and I was cheering on the grandchildren, and it was really fun. And I want to take this moment just personally to recognize Helen Mattiaski. Helen, about 15 years ago, I interviewed Helen as a teacher, and it was the best interview I ever had. And I thought, oh my gosh, will she accept and come to Davidsonville? And she did, and she made such an impact. She really is the reason for many of the successes at Davidsonville, and I just want to thank her personally. I'm so happy to see her here, and you're doing a great job at Hillsmere.
Dr. Arlato.
Thank you. I just want to give a quick shout out to CAT South, the Center for Applied Technology South, has got their open house tonight from 6 to 8. So those students that are interested and parents that are learning more about what CAT South has to offer their students and the wonderful programs, come on by. It's always a nice event. It's always well attended. So the open house at CAT South tonight from 6 to 8.
I just also wanted to mention that Mrs. Ritchie and I had the chance to do our first board outreach of this school year over at Wachapel Village in Gambril's Crofton area last Wednesday, and it was very well attended, and we appreciated all the parents and community members that came out to share their insights and concerns with us. And I think our next one is scheduled in the winter time. Michelle, do you remember where? February up in North County, I think. Yeah. So we will keep you posted when we have the date and the time. I also wanted to congratulate everybody who won their election last night, but particularly 2 of our former board members, Andrew Pruski, who won County Council District 4, and Ned Carey, who won District 31A delegate. So it's nice to see some former board members sharing their talents elsewhere for the state and the county. Next, we have 2.10, the CAC report.
Good morning. Thanks for having me here. And I don't have much thunder, so you didn't have to steal any of that. Thank you. As was reported, we had our November meeting this past Monday, and I am happy to report our committees are actively researching the topics, student expenses, communication, equity, and class ranking. We have a great group of CAC members, and they're all very excited and engaged, which is a good feeling to have. Our plan is to have final presentations and recommendations to you all by early 2015, kind of staggering it out over February, March, and April. Right now, our members are really focusing on creating a communication plan that encompasses modern technology, partnering with other groups such as the Office of Equity and organizations in the county, other organizations in the county, and ensuring that all families have access to discuss topics of concern and things related to our students in this county. If there's other topics that you would like us to take a look at, please let me know, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Item 2.11, the PIAC report.
Good morning, Ms. Kovalek. I apologize for my voice. I'm going to do the best I can. Ms. Nally, Dr. Arlato, and members of the board. You have heard me speak before, so I can talk, just not for the last week and a half. My name is Carol Streeter, and I'm the chair of the Superintendent's Parent Involvement Advisory Committee. I do have children in the Arundel cluster, and I appreciate you taking the opportunity not only to listen to me, but to hear what we're doing on our committee. We had our first meeting previously, and Dr. Arlato was kind enough to take time out of his schedule to come meet with us. We were able to have all of the members of our committee there, and we had new members as well as the old members. We were able to share with the new members what the purpose of the advisory council is. What's really nice is we had a diverse group of people, and we have brand new parents coming in, so we can hear different ideas of how we can share and become, help with volunteers at the schools. The main purpose of our initial meeting is to talk about the different topics that we want to have in our future meeting. So our next meeting, we're going to be talking about park, and we'll have people from the Board of Education and talking about that. In January, we're going to talk about the budget, and then other topics on our list that won out, because we had many, many more topics that we can never get to, is transportation, school safety, mental health concerns, and the role of the school counselor, and a communication strategy. We know there are more things than we can get to, but we're going to just try to get to as many things as we possibly can. We're very excited for the upcoming school year, and I appreciate your time letting us share with you what we're doing. Thank you.
We're now going to take about a 10-minute break to do pictures for all of our employee volunteers of the month. All right, the next portion of our agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda can offer testimony during the public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each, and the board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing the meeting. Student-specific as well as personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward their allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and any handouts should be given to our board assistant. I'm going to call the people who have completed cards first, group by subject matter, and then any others who wish to speak after can do so. I have Dana Williams and Jonathan Boniface.
Good morning. Dr. Arlotto, board members, good morning. Good morning to all. My name is Dana Williams. I come before you this morning with a mount of full, proud parents of Quarterfield Elementary School. A proud parent to bring before you a team of educators, truly to their students, true to their art of educating. Educators, enthusiastic and hardworking. I wish that we all could preserve this atmosphere of education at Quarterfield Elementary. Preserve this atmosphere free of the dangerous poisoning of our students and our educators by a very dangerous principal. My point comes to you in the form of a quote given to me to read before you today.
Ma'am.
Quote.
Ma'am, you're speaking about a personnel issue?
Pardon me?
It appears that you're speaking about a personnel issue, which is not appropriate for the public comment portion of the meeting. Could we have you address your concerns?
There will be no names given in the quote.
But you're speaking about a position at a school.
A quote given to me to read?
No, you were mentioning a principal at a specific school.
No, the quote was given to me to read, an anonymous quote.
Okay.
Not about anyone, only about a person's feelings.
But you were referencing a principal.
No, it is in reference to a child's feelings. May I read it or no?
You can read it.
Okay. As long as it's not Quote,
personnel.
Dad, what is it like to be black? It must hurt. It hurts my feelings to hear the way my friends are treated. End of quote. Board members, should education hurt? Please protect the atmosphere of education at Quarterfield Elementary School. Please remember, proper planning prevents poor performance. Board members, I thank you for your time. My name is Dana Williams. Thank you so very much.
Good morning, President Korbelek, Superintendent Arlotto, and members of the board. For the record, my name is Jonathan Boniface, lead organizer of Build Crofton High School. Over the last couple weeks, the citizens of Anne Arundel County elected new leaders. From the governor to the state house, to the county executive, to the county council, there are a lot of new faces and changes in who represents us. What hasn't changed is the need for an additional public high school to be located in Crofton. You've taken the first step toward addressing that need by requesting an updated facility study. We, the residents of Crofton and West County, request that AACPS include in the request for proposal the need for and feasibility of locating an additional high school in Crofton. We also request that the leaders of Build Crofton High School be allowed to attend the forums of stakeholders. We look forward to hearing the timeline for this updated study and want the board and the superintendent to know we will be pushing hard for a Crofton High School before the new county council, the new county executive, at the State House before the new Anne Arundel County delegation, and all the way up to the governor's office. As always, we appreciate all you do for Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and thank you for your attention to the approaching capacity problem we face. Thank you very much.
I have 5 more cards. We have Fidela Alvarado, Yolanda Lopez, Christina Light, Sarah Hoyle, and Janet Norman.
Muy buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Fidela Alvarado.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fidela Alvarado.
Estoy aquí referente a los cambios que quieren hacer en Tyler High.
I'm here in reference to the changes that you want to make for Tyler Heights Elementary.
Yo les pido que al enfrentarse con tomar una decisión final, no cambien a los niños que viven en los apartamentos de Cuayguares.
I ask of you that when you come to taking the final decision, that you do not change the children that go to the Quiet Water Parks apartment.
Hablando personalmente de mis 3 hijos, esto les afectaría psicológicamente. Mi hija mayor está en 4º grado y en estos años yo he notado que en cada ciclo de año ellos también pierden tiempo para adaptarse a su nuevo maestro.
Speaking personally about my 3 kids, this would affect them psychologically. My oldest kid, she's in 4th grade. And the last few years, I've noticed that each new school year, it takes them time to adapt to a new teacher and new peers.
Les cuesta adaptarse a sus nuevos maestros, a sus nuevos compañeros. Ella ha tenido el privilegio que en los últimos 2 ciclos escolares le ha tocado con la misma maestra.
She has had the privilege that in the last few school cycles, she has had the same teacher.
Y yo veo que académicamente ella ha mejorado como estudiante porque ella se siente como en familia, tiene la confianza de preguntar sus dudas porque ella conoce muy bien a su maestra.
And I've noticed that this has helped her academically. She's improved as a student because she feels like she's among family. She has the confidence to ask her questions if she has doubts because she knows her teacher very well.
Solo le falta este año en Tyler Heights y si la cambian a ella, le va a afectar el cambio para ir a la escuela intermedia de Anápolis. Ya que cada escuela tiene diferente forma de trabajo.
She only has this year left at Tyler Heights, and if you change her, it's going to affect her. She would be going to the Annapolis Middle School, and this would affect her because every school has their own way of working.
El personal de Tyler Heights se ve que es muy dedicados a nuestros niños y pienso que la mejor solución no es mover a nuestros hijos de su escuela, en la cual han estado algunos desde pre-K, sino apoyar a la escuela en subirlos en la lista para obtener un edificio nuevo para que no les afecte a nuestras familias.
the Tyler Schools personnel, I can see that they're very dedicated with our kids, and I think that the best solution would be to not move our kids from that school where they have been since pre-K, but rather support the school in getting a new building so that this would not affect our families.
Les pido que por favor, antes de tomar esa decisión de cambiar a nuestros niños, por favor, apoyen mejor a que se haga una escuela nueva. Muchas gracias por su atención.
I ask you that before making your decision, that please give us the support to build a new school. Thank you.
Mi nombre es Yolanda López.
My name is Yolanda Lopez.
Buenos días, estimados representantes del Comité de Educación. Yo vengo en representación de los padres de los apartamentos de Quiet Waters aquí en Anápolis.
Good morning. I am here representing all the parents from the Quiet Waters apartments here in Annapolis.
En las últimas semanas se han estado hablando sobre la redistribución de algunos niños de la escuela de Tyler High.
In the last few weeks, there have been talks about redistricting some of the kids in the Tyler High School.
Mi inconformidad es sobre que no estoy de acuerdo con los cambios que serán sugeridos con los niños.
My discomfort is that I'm really not, I do not agree with the changes that are being suggested for our kids.
Parece que ustedes solamente piensan en el impacto que ha producido la sobrepoblación en la escuela, pero no han valorado el daño psicológico de los niños.
It seems that you're only thinking about the impact that this will have in the overpopulation of the school, but you are not taking into consideration the psychological damage that this will have on the kids.
Pero lo que yo he escuchado en las reuniones pasadas, que el condado tiene dinero para construir nuevas banquetas y para trasladar a los niños a otra escuela en bases. ¿Por qué no se invierte ese dinero para construir la nueva escuela de Tyler High?
What I have heard in the past meetings is that you have money to build and put kids from this school in other buses, other schools, but why don't you invest that money in constructing a new school for Tyler Heights?
Okay. Yo estoy un poco molesta porque ustedes toman decisiones sobre nuestros hijos sin preguntar si como padres estamos de acuerdo en las decisiones que ustedes toman.
As a parent, I am a bit upset because when you make these decisions about our children, you are not asking us as parents if we agree with the decisions that you're making.
Yo quisiera decirles con todo respeto que para mí Tyler High es el pilar principal del éxito escolar de mis hijas.
I would like to, with all due respect, I would like to tell you that for me, Tyler Heights, it's the main reason of my children's success.
Y ellas están muy contentas con sus maestras, compañeros y personal educativo. Y ellas me dicen, mamá, no nos queremos cambiar de la escuela.
And they are very happy with their teachers, their peers, the school personnel, and they always tell me, Mom, I do not want to change schools.
Y me dolería mucho tener que cambiar a mis dos hijas.
It would really hurt me to have to change my daughters from to another school.
Muchas gracias por darme su atención en este tema. Tengan buen día.
Thank you for your time in this matter, and have a great day.
Yes, you can talk from there.
Okay, yes. Board, thank you so much for providing this opportunity to hear from the community. As part of the redistricting my name is Chris Leach, and I was a representative from Annapolis High School. As part of the redistricting committee, we had a volume of material to go through, and believe me, none of us took this charge lightly. As just a little personal background, as a child of a military family, that had to move during an elementary school year, that's extremely traumatic. I mean, I'm not trying to, but it's very difficult to make that move at a young age. But before any of you, if you could please just take a site visit to the school that we're talking about. They have 13 portables. This is from the faculty and staff who don't want to lose any of their children. Believe me, this was not about, please help us, but they actually want another school. But is that realistic to get that done quickly? They say that they lose an average of 25 minutes of instruction time, moving the kids in and out of the portables. That's 13 portables behind their school. When we have a tornado warning, which I was not aware of, they are required by law to move all of those children inside the building. I mean, just imagine that during the tornado warning, I believe we had Friday, 2 weeks ago, to move all of those children. How much more time are they losing in instruction? I want to stress the Tyler Height faculty, staff, the principal were wonderful. They would want a new school, but is that realistic to get that done at any time soon? There was a lot of dissension. We felt that we had our hands tied, only being given 3 schools to make a determination in order to do something. But the whole idea that these numbers are growing exponentially, I want to go ahead and if everyone could just look at the data when you're looking through it. Just going from 2014 to 2016, they're expecting a 10% increase in students. The school is getting huge. We did not take this charge lightly. I wish that you could give them some relief. No, we didn't. We weren't looking on a community to pick on, but it just seemed logical to move this one very large community to Georgetown East when you go through the materials and what the recommendation of the board was. But it was 10 to 9, so by no means you're going to hear some other opinions. That I think the biggest output I have is if you could please visit the school when you make any determination on what to do. And then the one thing is to not move too quickly, because one of the numbers going forward, and I'll try to make this better, that they didn't take into effect that the communities themselves were going to expand. So you were talking about moving a large amount of children to another school, but not anticipating growth in that one particular community. So when you look at the numbers, they really didn't match, and I made a note on the handout. Again, like I said, none of us took this lightly, and if you could I think the biggest thing is just go visit the school. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Hoyle, and I'm a parent and was also a committee member for the redistricting committee representing Mills Parole Elementary. So when I was asked to join the committee, I was to be speaking to the Mills Parole Knights of Columbus Admiral Way area charge. I was not as aware of the issues surrounding the Tyler Heights overcrowding until I was giving the materials for the redistricting committee, and I was appalled. I was just appalled by what was given to us and what our charges were. And as our charge was to relieve the overcrowding at Tyler Heights, we were given the option to use 2 neighboring schools, which are either, one is very close to capacity already, and the other one has a generous number of available seats. So in theory, if we were just playing a numbers game, we could essentially distribute these children evenly between the 3 schools. The problem is that, as Ms. Leach said, we are looking at neighborhoods with exponential growth. We've seen this happen at Germantown. We've seen it at Mills Parole. We're seeing it at Tyler Heights. The options that we were able to come up with, only being able to work within those 3 schools, are in no way going to be a permanent solution. We will again see overcrowding either at Eastport Elementary, Tyler Heights, Georgetown East, or all 3 within the next 4 years. That is considering the construction, the new classrooms to be added to Georgetown East, the new classrooms to be added at Eastport Elementary, we will still be either at capacity or over for all 3 schools. We're given rules of engagement for this charge. And the 5th rule states very clearly, do not lose sight of the fact that the best interest of all affected students is our first priority. I come here to you guys today not to dispute the option that was concluded with at the end of our redistricting committee, I guess, tenure, but I'm asking you to really look at the larger picture. Ask yourselves, why did you bring us this charge and what did you expect to get from it? If you are looking for a fair and equitable solution for all the students, if you are looking to eliminate gaps in achievement, if you are looking to create equal opportunities for all children, what we were given, we are not able to do that for you. We need a new committee to expand representation from all the Annapolis cluster elementary schools. And we also need to have a specific set of statistics, because we were given not additional but replacement statistics every week for the 4 weeks. And I know my time is up, but I just implore you and almost beg of you to help us to begin the process to get a new committee. And I think that a lot of us who've been in this for the last 5 weeks, giving hours of volunteer time, will be willing to do that again, because we care so much about all of the students in Annapolis. Thank you.
Good morning, board, Dr. Alato, Ms. Korblack, and the rest of the board. My name is Janet Norman from Annapolis Middle School. I was the representative from Annapolis Middle on the redistricting committee. I've come to you before to talk about the overcrowding problems at Tyler Heights. I wasn't planning on coming today, but I heard about the large gathering of parents from the Reserve at Quiet Waters Apartments, and I felt I had to be here to stand up for their concerns, and I'm so proud of them for making the effort to come here and talk to you. What I was really appreciative that Mr. Webb came and joined us, that a number of our city council members came and joined us at the meetings, and I was totally impressed with the dedication and professionalism of Scott Schuler and John Vanderkirk from your planning department. But each and every meeting we had brand new information that we had requested at the meeting where we were supposed to vote on a solution. Every single week of the 5-week process, we had packets, 44-page packets of information, new information, changed information. I do planning for my job, and this is not the way to do planning. So we were completely constrained by only having the 2 other schools to look at. It was not a fair process. The 200 seats that are coming online at Rolling Knolls Elementary were not allowed to be examined to move communities in logical geographic boundaries around, to reunite public housing communities where parents in those communities could actually walk or take easy bus transportation to their school. There was not a whole lot of logic applied to how this process would work best for the students. Now, to take the students from the Reserve at Quiet Waters who currently walk to school in a healthy way and whose parents can walk with them or visit the school, and then put them on a bus over to Georgetown East for the cost of $5 million over 12 years, does not make sense for parent involvement and engagement, does not make fiscal sense, just doesn't make sense on so many levels. We were rushed, the solutions were not good. I think you really need to reopen this and examine this with, now that we have good data, finally, with a more thorough examination. These students deserve better. We, as the receiving school of Annapolis Middle, we take Georgetown East, Tyler Heights, Eastport Elementary, and Hillsmere. These are our students that need to perform in middle school. And if you're not giving them the adequate resources and parent involvement process, they're not going to make it in middle school. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming out to advocate for your kids. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public participation? I don't have any other cards.
Good morning, Board. My name is Ken Bing and Dr. Arlato. I would like to talk to you about a safety issue. I heard Miss Carol Streeter mention something in her delivery. This past week, we had 3 students that were hit, Bates Middle School students that were hit on Spa Road by a moving car. We do know they were jaywalking, but I still think that there is a concern here. The intersection at Spa and what is now called Caraway, used to be Greenfield Road, is unbelievable that it was even allowed to be built. I have looked at it. There's a left turn lane. The buses cannot make a physical left turn at that lane without having the left turn lane that's coming out onto Spa back up so the bus can make the corner. What I'm hearing is Annapolis City and Anne Arundel County Schools have a crack. And as 2 governmental agencies, I am appalled to see that they're not working together to resolve these issues at this intersection. The amount of traffic that goes through that spot is incredible, and I invite you to spend a 7:30 to 8:30 morning standing over on the cemetery side and watch the amount of traffic that goes through that intersection. I will tell you that the people that I've seen going through that intersection have delivered one of the best courtesy driving systems that I've ever seen. Everyone that goes through that intersection really does a great job, and I don't hear horns honking, so I think that's really a compliment to the community. I did discover also that there is a crosswalk down by Smithsville, which is farther down Spa Road, which connects to a street called Nicholson, and it goes to a dead end, which then goes to the back of the school lot where the track is, and there's a partial path that comes up from the school, and it stops at the end of Nicholson Road, and there's a 60-foot section that's not connected. Of course, kids being kids, there's a path. I think that should be connected. I understand from the city of Annapolis that Anne Arundel County Public Schools does not want to give up that little tiny strip of property to make that happen. So I'm a little bit perplexed. I would like to see that there would be some action. I am definitely willing to even talk with with no promises at this point because I'm not the president of the PTA, but to see what the PTA at Bates Middle could possibly do to help that situation to make it safer for all of our kids at Bates. Those 3 students that were hit, my daughter personally knows them and was very affected emotionally as well that they got hit by a car. I'm not sure why this is like this. Both the Anne Arundel County School District and Annapolis City have been around a few hundred years. Well, the city has, maybe not the school district. And I'm just kind of amazed that something like this hasn't been taken care of in the past. So I would look for your assistance and input to that. I'd be happy to give you any information. If you take a Google Maps search real quick, you'll see what I'm talking about. My final comment, too, is I want to really thank these families that got up because it is so hard to see families of this nature come on up and speak in front of this board. You are, please don't take this personally, you are intimidating. So to get up here in front of you and to speak in another language, I was very impressed that they got up and spoke. And I really encourage that they bring more families to come up here and speak in front of you because it's what we need. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We'll now move on to action items. 4.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation, please.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. Our next item is item 4.02, personnel. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
I recommend that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. Our next item is 4.03, the 2015-16 school year calendar. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this item from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
I recommend the approval of the 2015-2016 school year calendar and tentative approval of the 2016-2017 school year calendar.
And we have a presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Very brief. Good morning, Ms. Korbelak, Dr. Maxwell, Dr. Arlato, and members of the board. I will not live this one down. As you know,
oh no,
I'm
you
Teresa
won't.
Tudor. I do know my name. I'm Teresa Tudor, Senior Manager for School and Family Partnerships, and I come before you today in my role as the Chair of the Calendar Committee. As we began our work on finalizing the 15-16 calendar and drafting the 16-17 calendar, we kept in mind the words of Abraham Lincoln. The best thing about the future is that it comes only one day at a time. On this day, I'm happy to tell you that we do have consensus from all of our bargaining units, our parents, our community members, and students on the calendar committee for the calendar that is in front of you. As you know, you tentatively approved the 15-16 calendar last year. In this calendar, we maintain the shorter time between the end of the marking period and the distribution of report cards so that families have more timely feedback on their students' progress. Last year, parents requested we align the 2-hour early dismissals for professional development with federal holiday schedules. We did that so it would allow them to spend part of the day with their children. It would also alleviate the need for additional daycare. Therefore, on this year that we're in, 2 of the professional days do align with Columbus Day and Veterans Day. Well, 50% of the people seem to really applaud that. 50% do not. They want the day to themselves. We've heard lots of feedback from federal and military families telling us that it's their day, and they would really like to have both of them to themselves. Obviously, it's a 50-50 split. This is not new. This has been the case forever. But so what we did in the 15-16 calendar is we kind of split the difference. Columbus Day will be a full day off for students. Veterans Day will be a 2-hour early dismissal, or a full day off for the parents. They don't have any children. Children will be in school on Columbus Day, but on Veterans Day, we're going to have the 2-hour early dismissal. We felt that's the best thing we could do. We did hear from lots of different people, and we also, our committee members came back with the shocked comments that they got as they were in their schools and people coming up to them telling them that they really wanted those days to themselves. The 15-16 calendar basically follows the same template as the 14-15, except for the professional development 2-hour early dismissals with the MSEA convention and students' days off. Many of the testing dates are not available at this time, so they will be added to the calendars as soon as they're available from MSDE. Today, I'm seeking final approval of the 15-16 calendar and tentative approval of the 16-17 calendar. And we're glad to answer any questions.
Mrs. Ritchie?
I know you said the testing dates weren't on here, and I just had a question because some things I've been hearing about, like the high school tests, when we do that and when we close schools, or they have the 2 hours for the, does all the counties do that, or do the schools just do the tests and?
No, every county doesn't do it. It's mixed up all throughout the county, but no, everyone doesn't
because
do it the way we
in
do.
elementary school, aren't they off when the high
Yes.
school testing is, when they have the high school testing and they go in for those, like just to take the test?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. But a lot of schools, they still send the kids to school. I mean, the kids aren't, I don't understand why the elementary school is off when the high school kids are taking a test.
Originally, when that changed,
part of it
some of it did have to do years ago. I don't know that the case anymore, but years ago, to do with busing cost and that type of thing. The other thing is we had parents at that time coming forward to the board saying they would like all of their children off at the same time. They didn't want the mixed schedule. Now, I can tell you, especially parents who don't have multiple children in school, they feel very strongly that we should not be closing elementary schools for high school students to take exams. I certainly think that's something we could look at, but the reason it was changed originally was because parents wanted their children on the same schedule.
Well, and I think that, I mean, as times change and stuff like that, that's what occurs. So I guess when you bring us those dates, will you have some information about
Sure.
about those and stuff like that? Only just because you know, and then that helps with the closing in schools and for the end of the year and stuff, right?
Well, the 2-hour early dismissals don't give
No.
us, we get credit for the days, but it would give us a little bit more flexibility. There are parents, I will say, in the survey that we got very few actual comments, 241. With a system this large, it's a small amount of comments. The largest majority spoke to wanting to start after Labor Day. Next to that, it was wanting to shorten spring break. There were lots of people who gave us feedback. But when I say 15% of 241, still it's not a large representation of the county. And many, many, many comments were about the 2-hour early dismissals. A lot of times they were trying to give us advice, though, glump them all into one and just take one day. Some of that just doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. But there were a lot of comments that we do have a large amount of 2-hour early dismissals.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we had added some time on there for professional development, which is necessary for us to be able to do the work. And I guess I think that, you know, when you were talking about the closing and not enough people who are giving comments, the fact of the matter is that they wait until after we made a decision, then they want to tell us how bad it is. Well, your time is not then, it's now. And so if you want to, you know, comment and weigh in, then you need to do it sooner than later. So after the barn door's closed, it's closed.
Ms. Ritchie, just to be clear, the dates for the high school semester exams are in this calendar. The January 19th to 22nd, and then the May dates. It's things like PSAT and those kinds of things that have yet to be determined.
The exact part,
Just so we're clear.
those things are what we don't have in.
I just had a question. I've had some families suggest or mention that the Mondays before primary or general election days, that we consider having those as professional development so families can have a 4-day weekend. Have you ever had any feedback on that from our surveys?
No, I haven't, but we haven't specifically asked that either. I mean, I haven't had any people writing in about that, but it's something we can certainly look at in the calendar committee.
I think I was told that some other counties are doing that, but I can't remember which ones.
Okay, we can look at that. We get copies of all of the counties. So,
Ms. Corbett, were you talking about full-day professional development there?
Yes.
Because then that would extend the end of your school year by a day.
Or they were suggesting swapping, if there was a way to swap professional development days and use the Mondays before those when we have elections. Don't have any more board comments. Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, we have a motion on the floor that was properly moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0-0.
thank you, board members and Dr. Arlato.
The next item on the agenda is 4.04, Employee Complaints Policy, GAHH, and this is an information item only. And I understand we have a presentation.
Very brief. The Employee Relations Office brings policy GAHH, employee complaints, to you for first reading. This policy was last updated June 15th, 2005. The revisions to this policy and its associated regulation provide an avenue for employees to file complaints when they allege a violation of workplace policies and regulations that are not governed by the negotiated agreements, other policies and regulations, or state and federal laws. Additionally, the revised regulation includes only 3 levels of appeal prior to reaching the board level, so that complainants' issues can be reviewed in a thorough and efficient manner. This policy and regulation will be posted on our website for 30 days. We welcome any questions or comments you may have.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. I think we had 4 levels last time, and we've gone now from 4 levels to 3 levels. That includes the board. That's outside of the board.
3 levels prior to reaching the Board of Education's level.
Okay.
And that's correct. It was formerly 4 levels, and based on the feedback of both Dr. Arlato and the policy committee, we felt that this would streamline the process and a complainant could get a resolution quicker if they in fact did need to go through all those levels. But based on the input from the policy committee, we did also add language that provides the opportunity for other staff to be involved in decision-making processes or for consultant and that sort of thing, so that no steps are missed. It's still a thorough review of the process or the complainant's issue, and then reaches the Board of Education's level just a little quicker.
Thank you.
You're clicking the wrong button. Mr. Webb.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure about spelling of complainant. Look at B2.
Yes. We can correct any misspellings. We will do that.
Yeah, that's in other parts of the document too, spelled like that.
Okay, we'll take care of it. Thank you.
Mrs. Ritchie.
Just looking through on, under General 6, number, oh, I've just lost it. F. Should grievance be in there? It says the classification positions may not be the subject of a complaint or grievance, but because this is not a grievance, this is talking about complaints. Do we strike that word grievance in there?
We probably could do that. We'll take a look at it, but we probably could do that.
And the only reason I say that is because we're going to making sure that it's real clear that this is about complaints, not about grievances. 'Cause,
Absolutely.
You define what a grievance is and you define what a complaint is.
Right.
You know, and so then down here we're saying complaint or grievance. And that would be then in the grievance piece.
Right. Technically, classifications wouldn't be subject to the grievance process either, but since, as you stated, this is speaking to the actual employee complaint process, we can take a look at that.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. Item 4.05 is also an information item, non-discrimination policy AC. And we have another brief presentation.
Yes. The President of the Board of Education brings policy AC non-discrimination to you for first reading. This policy was last updated September 5th, 2012. Revisions were made to this policy to update the legally recognized protected classes, which now include genetic information and gender identity. This policy will be posted for 30 days on our website for public comment. We will answer any questions you have related to this policy and regulation.
We don't have any board questions. Do we have any public questions or comments? Okay. The next item is 4.
Wait a minute, you have a comment from
I'm
the-
sorry.
I did hear that you're adding gender identity on that. Is there any, once you add these additional classes as they're identified, is there any training that's given to the teachers to help in what could become a very awkward situation between different relationships and understanding what those classes mean? And I'm not, of course, not expecting you to answer that, but just something to be taken into consideration, because it is we're not all familiar with what all that means and what that means when you encounter someone that is dealing with a gender identity. So thank you for your time.
Item 4.06 is an information item, non-discrimination and anti-harassment personnel policy GAGG.
The Division of Human Resources brings policy GAGG, non-discrimination and anti-harassment personnel, to you for first reading. Similar to AC non-discrimination, revisions were made to this policy to update the legally recognized protected classes. This policy and regulation will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment. We welcome any questions you have about this policy and regulation.
I don't have any board questions. Is there any?
Well, I do have a...
Mrs.
Sorry.
Ritchie.
Well, see, this is what happens when you don't go on the policy. And I'm just looking at this, and the purpose, under purpose, based on a person's membership in a protected class?
Yes. So under the law, if you're a member of a protected class, which we later identify in the issue section, then there are certain rights that you have based on that. So, and then there's a certain process that you would file a complaint through, which the regulation spells out if you meet the criteria for one of the protected classes.
I guess I just have a trouble with membership. It's not like I joined it.
I understand.
You know what I mean? I guess I'm just, identified. I don't know. I just have a problem with membership because it's not like a club I joined.
Right. I understand your concern. We can look
Yeah.
at that before second reading. Yeah.
there any public comment on this item? Okay, thank you. The next item is 4.07, the Piney Orchard Elementary School third-party project playground equipment. And this is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? Motion passes 700. We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the Piney Orchard Elementary School third-party project playground equipment.
And we have a presentation?
We do.
A small one. For the record, my name is Lisa Seaman Crawford, Director of Facilities, and I'll let everyone else introduce themselves, starting to my right.
Karen Bailey, Principal, Piney Orchard. Ann Greenawalt, President of the PTA at Piney Orchard.
Larry Albert, Supervisor of Planning, Design, and Construction.
Before you is a third-party project. It's playground equipment for Piney Orchard Elementary. As you recall, that because of the value of the project, it requires board approval. The final plans and specifications will be reviewed by the permit office and the facilities division also. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Mrs. Ritchie?
I always strongly feel that we should be putting playgrounds in, and not parents shouldn't be raising money. But you know, I think I stand alone in that aspect sometimes. But anyway, neither here nor there. What I wanted to say is I'm really glad to see that you all went after a bunch of grants as well, so that you didn't, you know, because that's like $53,000, isn't what I read in here, something like that, for the equipment and to place it. And that's a lot of money. And some schools have the ability to raise that money, and some schools don't. So glad that you went with the grants and were able to do that as well.
Very impressive. Looking forward to seeing it at my neighborhood playground. Any public comment? Okay. And we have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 700. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 4.08 West Annapolis Elementary School Stormwater Management Inspection and Maintenance Agreement. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of entering into a stormwater management inspection and maintenance agreement with the City of Annapolis for West Annapolis Elementary School.
Any board discussion or questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 700. The next item on the agenda is 4.09 West Mead Early Education Center Kindergarten Edition Design Development. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the West Mead Early Education Center Kindergarten Edition Design and Development.
I don't see any board questions. How about public comment or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 700. The next item is item 4.10, adoption of board handbook revisions. This is an action item. Mrs. Nally.
I recommend approval of board handbook revisions.
Is there any board discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 700. We now have a review item 5.01, the school facilities study process, and there's a staff presentation.
Good morning. I'm Alek Shaknovich, Chief Operating Officer for Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and it's my pleasure to present item 5.01 for your consideration. It is a review item regarding the strategic facility utilization master plan update. There's a PowerPoint presentation that should have been provided and will be provided to the members of the public as well. So let me walk you through sort of a history of some of the past studies that we've undertaken here at Anne Arundel County Public Schools to better inform our facilities management process. Back in 1999, we had a citizens committee on the maintenance, repair, and renovation of public schools. It's called the Ebersberger Hall Study, is what we commonly refer to it. Then in 2002, the county executive stood up a Blue Ribbon Commission and generated a school construction report that was led by Ed St. John, and we call that the St. John Report. When the implementation of the state mandate to introduce full-day kindergarten came about from the state superintendent at that time, we engaged with the SHW group to undertake a report regarding the impact and the implementation of full-day kindergarten here within Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And again, we call that our kindergarten report. The state treasurer, Nancy Kopp, led a statewide initiative, and although it was statewide, it greatly relied on the model and the practices and the information that was garnered by the state regarding our process of managing and maintaining facilities here in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And in fact, a lot of the processes that we had in place at that time and still utilize to this day were positioned in the COP report and disseminated throughout the state as examples of best practices, some of which are our utilization of prototype schools, for example. But the COP report, again, was a statewide effort that spoke to the maintenance of school facilities and how to go about that in an orderly manner, as well as identifying some of the cost implications statewide for that. In 2005, we had the Superintendent's Task Force report, and that was led by Penny Cantwell and Clement Wesley. And again, it spoke tremendously to the issue of support services and our infrastructure needs here in Anne Arundel County. Those reports basically led up to and following up on a recommendation from the Cantwell-Wesley report to us undertaking our first initiative to create a strategic long-range facility utilization master plan here at Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And that works part and parcel with our comprehensive maintenance plan, our education facility master plan, and our capital improvement program that we put out on an annual basis. So let me walk you through what has stayed the same and what has changed as a result of the MGT report, or the Strategic Facility Utilization Master Plan. So what has stayed the same is how we go about developing the CIP. So it begins here in Anne Arundel County Public Schools with the superintendent receiving staff input. The superintendent then formulates his or her recommended CIP that's put forward to the Board of Education for their consideration. The Board of Education has a very deliberate process of receiving stakeholder input from a wide array of constituencies to better inform your decision-making capacity, as well as your analysis of the superintendent's recommendation. And finally, the Board of Education will either accept or amend as they see fit the superintendent's recommendation and adopt a capital improvement program budget that is then forwarded to both our partners at county government and state government. So with respect to the county government, the county executive receives the board adopted capital improvement program and then embeds his or her recommendations along with the rest of the capital improvement program needs across the county, be they in public works, be they in public safety, be they in central services for the county regarding their facilities, rec and parks, et cetera. So our Board of Education sub-element of the CIP becomes part of the county's larger CIP. That's then forwarded to the county council. They, like the Board of Education, also have a process to receive constituent input and stakeholder input from across the county from a wide variety of interests. They take that into consideration, and ultimately, by June, they adopt the county council's version of the adopted budget. So that remains the same. It remained the same before the MGT study and remains the same afterwards. But some things have changed. So beginning with the implementation of the MGT report, which coincided with our 2005-2006 calendar year, so it informed our 2006 and 2007 CIPs, what changed was the following. Our CIP process became much more data-driven, conversely, much less emotion-driven. It was a much more orderly process, far less chaotic. Those two things taken together speak to our capital improvement project process and program not being driven by who screams the loudest, who is best able to organize different bands of constituencies, which politicians carry the most weight, or which politicians may or may not be able to band their efforts more efficiently or effectively. Our capital improvement program became much more transparent and much more predictable. We very clearly articulated what our sequence of capital improvement project requests were going to be. The public, the county government, the state government, et cetera, staff here within a school district all knew exactly where they were in line, and they had some confidence and predictability about where they stood. It was no longer, hey, I'm third in line. Next year I've slipped to 11th in line. The year after that, I rallied the troops. I'm back up to 7th. Whoops, I slipped back to 9th. Again, much like a conversation I have with my own teenagers, you may not always like the answer, but at least you got an answer. And so it gave that predictability to everybody, and that predictability added to a tremendous amount of stability. It also led to a very efficient and predictable budgeting and planning process. And that predictability and efficiency aided not just us here in Anne Arundel County, but tremendously aided the county government and the state government in terms of their planning efforts, their long-range budgeting efforts, et cetera. So what is the purpose of a strategic facility utilization master plan? Essentially, it's quite simple. We examine specific facility-related needs and trends. We determine a course of action to then remedy any identified deficiencies. And finally, we develop an orderly, data-driven plan to address those long-term facility needs. Such an effort requires that we go through a number of steps to arrive at a conclusion. And so let me walk you through the different elements of a work plan to update or create or update a strategic facility utilization master plan, and some information regarding times associated with that. The most critical step is step one. The most critical step is to develop and agree upon the scope, a methodology, a timeline, and the costs and level of efforts required to put into it. It is key, it is the most critical element, because some fundamental decisions have to be made at the outset regarding that scope, because that then does drive things like the time to undertake the study, the cost, the methodology, et cetera. So let me give you a couple examples of what is required as part of that scope deliberation. For example, we have a standing 6-year CIP. The CIP that was informed by the last master plan that is not yet expired, right? It had a shelf life out to 2016. So, for example, are the schools that are on the current list held harmless? Or do they go back into the pool for reconsideration, reshuffling, etc.? They've been on that list since 2006. They may or may not have some expectations about whether they wish to remain on that list or not, for example. Do we charge the consultants with taking a look at programmatic initiatives? For example, the continuation or expansion of magnet programs. Do we deal with the expansion and the timeline associated with a full-day kindergarten implementation? Half-day, full-day, etc. That needs to be, that and items like those programmatic considerations need to be identified up front. Do we only focus on our existing schools, or do we focus on our existing schools plus the need for added schools? And since we're speaking about added schools, do we look at creating some building size thresholds, limits, ideals that may lower or suppress the capacities of some of our buildings, thereby driving the need for more schools possibly? And finally, some of the technical issues regarding weightings, et cetera, because this is going to be a formula-driven answer, and every element of that formula has to be predetermined very exactingly and has to be agreed upon. And essentially, that agreement has to be a 4-part agreement. It was the seminal reason for why our current strategic facility utilization master plan has withstood the test of time, withstood challenge. And the 4 parties essentially are, you have to have concurrence in advance of what those rules are by the county executive, by the county council, by the superintendent of schools, and by this Board of Education. Absent that concurrence on the front end, you will not have unanimity on the back end of the report's conclusions. Again, that's absolutely essential. And so I estimate that will probably be about a 2-month duration. Once we settle upon the scope, the methodology, the timeline, and costs, we have to enter into and execute a contract. That takes approximately a month to do that procurement exercise. We'd also have to request a fund transfer from the county government, because I believe the board recalls that in the chief administrator's contingency fund over in county government, there is a line item to fund a study. Should the board wish to pursue it, we'd have to formally request that transfer. We'd have to develop a baseline profile of our existing facilities as they exist today. Again, that would take approximately 1 month. We'd have to go about the process of informing all of our stakeholders regarding both the purpose and methodology in a very transparent process, in a very transparent way, how we're going to go about undertaking the study, as well as solicit broad stakeholder input from all of our constituencies. And again, that will take approximately 1 month. Then the subject matter experts would need to go and assess the condition of the facilities, do all the field work required to collect the data, to do the analysis. That's about 2 months worth of level of effort. Demographic data would need to be collected from numerous sources, federal, state, local, Board of Education sources. That data collection process would take approximately a month. That data would then need to be analyzed. Projections, capacities of facilities, et cetera, would need to be calculated, leading to utilization rates. Again, that exercise would take approximately 1 month. That analysis of those future educational trends, the ones that I spoke about earlier, regarding which elements in the future, in addition to simply enrollment-driven considerations, do we want our buildings to be capable of supporting adequately, would need to be identified and then assessed. The buildings would need to be looked at in terms of their suitability to support those programs, infrastructure-wise, technology-wise, as well as capacity-wise, because each and every one of those programs has different needs, different space requirements, different infrastructure support elements to underpin those needs. It would take approximately a month to do that body of work. Then finally, you'd have to calculate cost estimates, determine time implications, and develop impact statements regarding each and every one of those recommendations for each and every one of those facilities. And that would take approximately a month's worth of level of effort. Finally, those recommendations would need to be sorted, prioritized, and a report generated. That would take approximately a month. And then there would be the essentially public unveiling, the presentations not only to this Board of Education, but other stakeholder groups, including county government, state government, our parents, and other audience. So it will be very simple to add those numbers up, and it looks like there's 14 months worth of level of effort, and there are. However, some of those elements can be undertaken concurrently, so it's not entirely a linear process. So there would be overlap depending on how the plan is structured. Again, that does speak to timeline and to cost, so that is some of the negotiating elements that would have to be determined up front. And with that, I'm prepared to address any questions that the board might have.
Mrs. Ritchie?
So when you alluded before, when you talked about that the shelf life of the previous MGT study was to 2016, if we started this study in January, that takes about a year, 14 months, give or take, you know, a couple months for some that overlap, that would take us into 2016, which would be when this one, I mean, I don't know whether we planned to wait until 2016 when that one expired, because you made some, you know, talked about some of the things about whether we move people on that and what are the level of expectation, and those levels of expectation are going to be there whether we do it now, whether we do it in 2016, whether we do it in 2018, because there's still people waiting on the list. So, you know, and it may or may not show a change. So we may have a school that's at number 2 now, but if we did a new study, that A school may come in at number 5 because other schools had moved up for whatever reason. And so do we then honor number 2, the A school for at the level of number 2, or do we take it down to number 5? I mean, I don't know, but is that a reason not to do it because we're afraid of whatever it's going to do? So that's just a comment. But is the point to have something ready to go in 2016, or is the point to wait to 2016 to do something?
Well, certainly staff and myself would do whatever is the pleasure of the superintendent and board, but ideally we would begin that work in a sufficient time in advance such that when the capital improvement program is unveiled in 2016, the results of the study would be then utilized to inform that capital improvement program in the year 2016. So I would suggest that if we want to go about this, that we start in
sooner
advance.
Than later.
Of. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Dr. Arlato?
And if I could just add and bring some emphasis to that point that Alex made, and then you, again, Ms. Ritchie, brought up, the parameters are going to be really important on the front end, that we establish how we're going to go about not only the process of getting the contract and bringing the contractor in and going through the process of an MGT-like study, but exactly answering those questions that you brought up. What are we going to do with the schools that are already on the list and have been waiting, and they continue to wait? And then are we just going to start anew? Are we going to flip the switch and clean the slate? Those are things that Mr. Shaknovich brought up, and again, I want to reemphasize the points that you brought up. Those are going to be very important that we establish on the front end of that, and that all the 4 entities are in agreement, so that when the study does come out, and that we then coordinate it with our 2016 facility master plan, that we're all on the same page.
And I would agree, because, you know, I mean, everybody, you have to be careful what you ask for sometimes. And people are saying, you know, well, we need to have a new study. We need to have, when that new study may show that you may think this school needs to be number 1. Well, in fact, it really actually needs to be number 12. And so now you're going to have to, you know, so people are going to just have to be willing. And having been around when they did the MGT study before, I remember that it was a very fair people we didn't know, they didn't have any, you know, dog in the fight, pony in the show, whatever you want to say. And every single thing was the same in every school they went into. They looked at the same things, they asked the same questions, they went to the community forums and did the same thing. So there was no, you know, weighing one side or against another, or loading the deck in favor of any one school, and we didn't know what that was going to show. And people are coming back and saying, "Oh, that wasn't, you know, that's not how it is now." Well, a new study will show whether that's how it is or not now. So,
Mr. Jackson.
In any acquisition that you perform, the statement of work is critical. Any acquisition, I do it every day. At the DoD level, it's important. Scope and methodology and execution of that is critically important. But the real question to me is, so when do we start? The election happened yesterday. That was one of your concerns, Ms. Brandenburg, associated with this presentation and everything. That was yesterday. So my question is, when do we get moving on this? Because my answer is, I hope we've already started. But that means these 2 months are already underway. That's what I'd like answered. When do we get started?
Mrs. Ritchie.
Since I didn't hear our superintendent say we've started, then I'd like to make a motion that we start.
Second.
And, I mean, you know, do we need a date? Do we need a time? Do we, you know, what's the preference? I don't want to say start now when you all know that really we should start in February, so.
Well, we currently have a county executive and a county council that has less than 30 days worth of shelf life. They will come, you know, a new county executive, new county council will be sworn in December 1st. We have no idea how long it will take for them to put their key individuals in place. For example, who's going to be the county CAO, who's going to be chairperson of the council, who's going to be the county's budget officer, et cetera. So we need some critical elements to fall in place on the county government side, because again, remember, you needed sort of this sort of robust upfront discussion, and the players aren't even in existence, or at least not all of them have been identified. And then, although this may be your top, you know, concern, possibly, that this may be their 9th top concern, and you know, we'll certainly do our best to get on our schedule, but they may actually have some bigger fish to fry, you know, day one coming into office.
Well, I'm sure they probably do, but they are the ones that gave us the money, and then they are the ones that complain when we didn't use it. So, you know, just put it out there. And but I think that it's important for us to say that we need to start this. And there's some stuff that we need to start that doesn't have to do with them right now. You know, I mean, and the fact is that if we start this now and we start having the discussion about what do we want the questions to look like, what do we want the, you know, all the things that you brought up before, if we start having that now, then when it's time and we can engage, so we may take a 3-month break or 2-month break waiting for them to do whatever. But if we don't get it in there now, I mean, so if I say in a motion, do we have a date, let's start February 1, start the process, then is that gonna fit in nicely, or is it not? I mean, because I don't want to give you a date and say let's start February 1, and then you all go, really, that's not a good date. Let's do it now. Let's figure it out right now and say what it is, and let's move forward. And when the county council, you know, gets their stuff together, then that's fine. But I mean, and even if we have to wait, there has to be a break in there because they're doing all their pieces. We can still manage all our pieces and get that started now, can't we?
Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, my thought process here is that the scope has to be figured out internally first. That doesn't necessarily mean that the county executive and the state government and the county delegation, they're all going to agree to it. But we got to get ourselves on the same page first, the board, the superintendent, and the staff here. I think we need to be moving out on that. If you're going to go negotiate on something, you need to have what your negotiating position is, and we need to start developing that. We need to start developing that now. Are we going to take those schools that are now schools on the list 1, 2, and 3, but they were on the original study as 10, 11, and 12? Are we going to throw them all back in the pool, or are we going to grandfather those schools? That's a conversation that we need to have, and we need to figure out what our position is on that now. And so we have something relative to scope when we get ready to go to the negotiating table with our other entities that are valuable players in this process. We need to be doing that now, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, we have 4.
Mr. Webb?
I assume we still have the scope of the project from the MGT study. How different will the scope be for a new MGT type study?
The framework will largely be the same. It's just some of the internal specifics that would have to get altered.
Okay, and annually, do you do a baseline profile of all current facilities?
Not to the extent that would be undertaken here. So we certainly do. Again, that's embedded within our comprehensive maintenance plan or education facility master plan.
You assess the conditions?
Yes, sir.
So as I'm listening to the board, we will, staff and I will sit down in the next couple of weeks and begin to put together, as we see a scope of work from our end, and bring to you in the next couple of weeks a series of questions that you'll need to answer as a body, giving us then direction to move forward. As the players do move into place, we'll then begin that outreach and begin to involve them. But we can, I hear you loudly and clearly, and it makes sense for us to begin some of that work now internally.
So would you like to restate your motion? Are you going to include a date?
Well, and that's what I was waiting for. Is I mean, if you say now, then we can say December 1, start the process. If you say no, you'd rather wait until like the beginning of the year to, get everything ready. It doesn't mean you can't start doing some stuff now, but for all of us, then January 1 or, the beginning of the new year, it just makes, because it's going to take a year to about basically do all of it. So, I mean, I'm looking to you to tell me whether you want the date to be December or January or some date other than that.
I don't have a date in mind. And so I'd prefer to sit down with staff and begin that conversation internally before I bring a date forward. We don't have a date in mind when we think the work needs to start.
Okay.
But
so
we'll begin our own internal process
now. By our
now.
next meeting, we will have information from a recommendation from the superintendent on the date that it should start. Does that work?
In the you can make a motion, Ms. Rich. I mean, the board certainly has the ability to do that. I think the superintendent's but I think the superintendent's indicated that we've heard you and we understand, what your, pleasures and desires are regarding this matter. And I think that if we had the opportunity to sit down with the superintendent and work out a timeline and also reach out to some consultants that are working in this area to sort of vet some of these initial thoughts, I think we would be in a much better position to bring you back some information that may be of more value to you than simply picking an arbitrary
and that's
date,
what I thought
date
this
out
was
of the
going
air.
to do. So, I mean, I maybe was not quite clear when we made the motion before, because that's what I was anticipating when this came here, not the timeline, because I anticipated that when you all were going to start and then what it was going to mean from there. So that piece was missing out of that I maybe didn't articulate quite as correctly. So that's why right now I'm adamant about making sure that the date and stuff is that everybody understands what I'm really asking for. I want to know what the date is we want to start doing this. And so that's why I'm looking for direction. And
the motion that you had on the floor was to let's get started.
Right. And that's not really an appropriate motion.
Yeah.
So I understand that, and that's why I'm asking these questions. And I think Ms. Brandenburg had maybe something.
Yep, Mrs. Brandenburg.
I just want to add, and I'm happy to forward it over to you. They're in the process, MSD, they had just been asked to review school size, school construction, adequacy for funding, et cetera, et cetera. The first report came out of 3 for school size, school construction, that sort of thing. They're all supposed to be delivered in November. And much like Mr. Shaknovich was saying, I think it would behoove us to take a deep breath, collect information, not set a date to this. Much like Dr. Arlotto said, I heard you loud and clear. Let's sit down, let's talk. We can regroup and go from there, rather than put a specific time, specific date, or anything else as we're waiting for all this information to come in, see who the new key players are, see who transitions, who doesn't, that sort of thing. In my opinion, I understand what you're saying, but I think at this point, it doesn't do us any harm to take a deep breath, let some of the pieces fall into place, and go from there.
Mrs. Nally?
Yeah, listening to the discussion, I think that the message, personally, I'd like to get across is that we want a study done. But I'm not sure setting a date. I think, and I know there's some things that we need to do, ground things, but I really feel strongly that as early as possible, the new players need to be brought in on the ground floor, the new elected officials, because if, as you've said, and Dr. Arlotto, if we don't get all 4 of those entities to agree, this makes no difference. I mean, it will not work. Back when the original one was done, it was quite considered, as I recall, and I was a principal then, quite a coup for those 4 groups to strongly overcome political, it wasn't who had the strongest political pull, the wealthiest areas. It was, we've all agreed that whatever this study is, this is what we've agreed to go forward on. And that was the reason why so many of our schools, in my opinion, had been neglected, because it was the politics that pushed school construction. This took it out of it. So I think that discussion is really important as soon as possible to have with the other folks. I think for the children, we need to say, and maybe some of these same schools that are on the top of the list will still. I was a principal then, and they came out and did a very thorough analysis of every school. I mean, the principals talked about it, how, and so I was impressed with the depth that this group took, and they were hired, as I recall, from out of state, so they didn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. They were really, and all that takes time, but I so strongly feel that, and and Dr. Arlotto knows, the time it's going to take by the time those folks get in office and things begin cracking. I mean, a timeline we set may not be their timeline, so that's all.
Mrs. Ritchie?
Then my motion is that I would like the superintendent to bring us back by our December board meeting, what their timeline is in terms of when they start to implement, and whether that's internal, external, understanding that things have to be worked out, understanding that just because it's our timeline doesn't necessarily mean it's somebody else's timeline, but there's things that we can start implementing now and start doing now internally that sets it up so that we're not, running 6 months into, behind of what we really wanted to do. So I would like to respectfully request that the superintendent bring us something back then.
That's your motion? Is there a second? Okay. Is there any further board discussion? Is there any public comment?
Ken Bing, just in listening, I think, obviously from being outside, not understanding the complexities, and also very defiant that the county government even has a say-so in the school district. The fact that we're waiting for the king to die doesn't seem very time efficient. And you have to forgive me, but my background is automotive industry, and we don't wait 30, 60 days to put something into production. We have to start right away. So I really would like to see, not necessarily today, but very soon, that the board puts a stake in the ground, regardless if the county likes it or not. I realize that they need to come on board, and that's part of the process that exists today. However, somebody's got to start the ball rolling, and it just seems, in my opinion, that there's almost too much caution being given to something that needs to move forward. Coming from Crofton, my cross-street neighbor had kids in the system about 20-some years ago, and I hear the same story about there is no high school. So, you know, whether that's, you know, placed one way or the other, this community continues, that community in particular continues to go through where supposedly there's going to be a high school. And year after year, decade after decade, there's no change. And yet the board continues to switch over, and I just think that what I heard this gentleman speak to is sounded like a good, sound foundation and a way to methodically approach this and start taking out the politics and the other things and keep in line the items that are important. My field of industry was automotive safety, and no matter what the car was going to look like, safety always comes first in an automobile when it's being designed, no matter what somebody wants the car to look like. So we have a set of criteria, I'm sure, that the board uses, and of course our children are forefront in that, and I think that always needs to be the mantra that's being displayed to all these different political groups and decision makers that are in this particular pie. So thank you for listening to my comments.
Jonathan Boniface with Bill Crofton High School. I think we were basically, when we came in here today, we were looking for a timeline, as Ms. Ritchie said, not a time frame. I think what we were given here today was a time frame of how long it would take to do an updated MGT study, not a timeline of when it's going to be done. And I think that's, you know, something we have to look at, and we have to get started with, especially if it's going to take 14 months. Conditions have changed since the 2005-2006 MGT study. We kind of do need a clean slate. Demographics have changed. Parts of the county, like Crofton and West County, have boomed, where other areas, such as Severn and Pasadena, have not boomed as much. The projections in the MGT study showed Old Mill being way over capacity, Chesapeake being way over capacity, and currently they're not. There's 770 empty seats at Old Mill. Chesapeake has a ton of empty seats. West County doesn't. Annapolis is not going to have any anymore. South County, I mean, it's all moved, it's shifted. So I think we do need a clean slate. And every year your projections are growing, and we need to look at all the schools, and we need to look at the needed schools to fill in to where those projections have risen. And if we don't start now, I mean, when is this study going to be published? If it's 2016, we're going to be on what, fiscal year 2018? And looking at the 6-year CIP for then. Having spoken to a lot of the new parties, and I really have, I've been out there speaking to all the candidates before they were even elected last night, and there is a consensus on this, and you can bring those parties together. And I hope that if you reach out to them, you'll see that they're willing to work on this. From the State House, from Republicans, Democrats, the County Council, I've spoken to all of them, and they all see the need for this study. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. Just reach out. Thank you very much.
Motions, so I'm going to withdraw all of my motions. Can I do that, Tyson? Mr. Bennett, excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to withdraw all of them and start anew.
Okay.
I move that we begin the work plan as presented.
Any board questions or comments on this one? Okay, Mr. Webb.
Begin the plan as presented. Is that what you said?
That's what they wrote. I don't know what that means.
If effective.
Yeah.
I want a begin date. Today?
Okay. I guess that means this. Begin today.
All
Begin
right.
this as presented.
That works.
Okay.
Do we have any public comment on this motion? Okay. We have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes 5-2.
There we go. Done.
The next item on the agenda is a review item 5.02, award of contracts. Do we have any board questions or comments? Do we have any public comments? Okay. And the last two items are consent items 6.01 and 6.02. Do I have a motion to bundle these two consent items and move them from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the board award contracts listed as 6.01 and 6.02 inclusive, which are up here on the agenda.
Second.
Are there any board questions or comments? Any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0-0. I just have a few announcements. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, November 19th, here at 7 p.m. The next Board Policy Committee meeting is on Wednesday, November 12th at 8:30 a.m. in Conference Room 2A. The next Board Budget Committee meeting is Tuesday, November 11th at 5 p.m. in Conference Room 2A. And we have a Board of Education retreat scheduled for Saturday, November 15th at 11 a.m. at Anne Arundel Community College's Student Union Conference Room 204. Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Ms. Korbelak. I just wanted to thank Mr. Boniface and Mr. Bing for mentioning that our priority is the children. Oftentimes we have these conversations and I never hear that word child or student or children mentioned, and it should be paramount in every discussion about the school system that it's for the benefit of the children. That goes for the politicians as well. We all should be on the same page as far as that's concerned. Thank you.
And Mrs. Nally.
I'd like to move that we close our meeting to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0-0. This portion of our meeting is now adjourned.